The problem is if you made every month like awareness for everything that has awareness months, then you'd have to wear like every color all the time, and that would suck.
Like the aware every color.
Yeah. You have to have like pink on for breast cancer. You'd have to have yellow for testicular cancer. You'd have to have black for civil rights awareness.
Did you already say purple with pancreatic cancer?
No.
Okay.
That's a thing. I didn't know that. You also have to be like green for diarrhea awareness.
Oh!
That was ugly.
That's so sketchy.
Yeah, that is obviously a mixed drink.
Oh, no, it's not.
Yes, it is. And you're like, oh, I got a practice my 21st birthday coming up, so I'm just gonna have half a bottle of random alcoholic beverage.
No, I thought Sam would be
and
I thought Sam was gonna be here.
Always get drunk for it. Go! It would be nice if you had like one of those like easy chairs that was also a toilet.
Yes, if they're gonna have those, I guarantee you.
I'm pretty sure that's a thing. Get up.
Don't litter.
Oh,
You just
yeah.
littered.
That's right.
Okay.
That's a fine. I'm a safety sheriff. I can fine you for
can't get into
that.
your-
I will write you up. I have my key, damn it.
Do it.
Alright, I'm gonna go get the write-up form. If I have them, my desk.
Pretty good.
Where we at? That's right. Fucking hell. Time to pop a bottle. Make it rain in the
So
club.
this kid here is the bully, and this kid's getting picked on. This kid.
Was he wearing a turtleneck under that sweater? That's what it looked like.
It goes around those turtleneck.
I was gonna say, if you're wearing a turtleneck under that sweater, I just lose respect for you. That's the kind. 'Cause when you're wearing that special sweater. That was like spot on right there. You should go on a touring act, just sing that to millions of screaming fans.
Seriously.
Actually, I was an English secondary education major in college, and I wanted to be a high school English teacher. But when I finished school, there were just no jobs. So I got a job in a library because I thought, oh, that's books, And I was working with little kids, preschoolers. And I actually really liked it. Like, I didn't think I would because I didn't think I liked children. But I really liked it. So then I stayed with that, and then I went and I got my master's in library science because the first job I had was like a really low-paying job, and I was never going to be able to get a good job if I didn't get the master's. So I got the MLS. I loved that, and then I was a librarian again for 2 more years after that. And then I went back for my PhD, and I actually went for a PhD in library science because the plan originally, so my 2 initial ideas for my career when I was going back to get my PhD were that I would either be a professor in a library school teaching children's and young adult literature, because that was my interest. So I always want to take that class away from Carol Peters. Or I wanted to be the director of youth services for a big urban public library system like New York or Philadelphia. I didn't love teaching librarians, and I didn't love the coursework. So that's when I switched halfway through my PhD to communication. And I just thought it was fascinating. And the person that I ended up working with allowed me to study librarians, but from a communication, like to study their communication. So I developed my research, my dissertation was basically a discourse analysis, which is a communication-centered methodology of librarians in a decision-making situation. So that was that. Both of my graduate degrees are from Rutgers. So I started at Juniata in 2001, 1 year after I finished my PhD. Okay, here's a better question. How many of you have the article with you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it? 6, 7. Okay, good. If you have it on your computer, that's good. Okay. All right. So get the computer out and or get the article out and share it with someone or some couple of people near you, just so that everybody has access to it. Okay. And I want you to look at the section called, I think it's called From Self to Relationship. There we go. Okay, so this is where I want you to start. It's in the top left. I wish you had page numbers. I should rescan this. Okay, so get together in some small group, start with that section, and identify a sentence or two that are the main argument of that section. That's what I want you to do.
Hi. Oh, were these classes canceled?
Bottom of the page, right?
Yeah, and then what's potentials are realized because there are others to support and succeed them. What hasn't ever brought to success?
Okay, good. So did everybody hear where she was talking about? The bottom of that first page, right? One's own role thus becomes that of participant in a social process that eclipses one's personal being. One's potentials are only realized because there are others to support and sustain them. You have an identity only because it's permitted by the social rituals of which you're a part. You're allowed to be a certain kind of person because this sort of person is essential to the broader games of society. How many of you would agree that that's a good way to sort of think about that whole section? Okay, good. Do you have other ideas here of what other sort of words or concepts or sentences in this section sum it up well? You like that? We're going to go with that. All right, so what does that mean? Now somebody translate that. So after I was here for 12 years, then I was able to apply for and got promoted to full professor, which is like, that's as good as it gets.
Right. That's awesome.
It is awesome. Well, I mean, I get to talk and think about things that I find interesting all day long. So that's it's fun. Like, it's actually, like, I'm interested all the time in what I'm doing. It's not how to read a spreadsheet. It's not how to write a formula. It's philosophical, but it's so much fun when people like it and when they get into it and when I can see them getting turned on by it and learning. That I love. Like, the math people would say, well, yes, obviously there's a right and a wrong answer, but we never run out of questions. You know, like, they are just as curious about math as we are about communication. It's just that it's not how our brains have been trained. So traditionally, the field is broken up into, like, mass communication, organizational communication, interpersonal communication. Those are the three really big divisions. So mass comm is like movies and television and all that, like violence in the media, all that stuff.
I wish they make show commercials ever. This was really nice. Is this a car commercial? So, yeah.
I think it's a drink commercial.
Looks like they're making a car out of this liquid though.
It's our phone commercial.
Also fun, yeah.
We're all wrong. No, it's a phone. See, when that last part, I thought they were turning it into like a kitchen cable, like a sink or something. And I'm like, what is this, a sink commercial? Like,
Okay,
since when do you advertise sinks?
Organizational is like workplace business. Interpersonal is relationship. I actually record people interacting and then I analyze the interaction. So I do like transcribe conversations. I kind of think about it as like on one dimension, you could go from interpersonal to mass comm, and then on another dimension, you have like theoretical approaches or methodological approaches. It's okay, so the quote is, studying nonverbal communication is like studying non-cardiac physiology. That's such an interesting sort of way to think about nonverbal communication. Like, you have to have the nonverbal and the verbal, right? And you have to study them separately in some ways because there's a whole different set of vocabulary for each one, and the way we talk about gesture, right? Like, what am I doing right now? I'm gesturing. I gesture a lot, actually. And these gestures are speech-dependent gestures because if I were sitting here just doing this, it would look like I was insane, right? But there are also speech-independent gestures. So if you ask me if I'm having a good day and I'm busy, I can just go like that for you, right? It's independent of speech.
That's as bad as texting.
Adam, you just winked.
You know 55,000 people die a day because of texting while driving?
Oh, he caught it! He caught it! Take words out of bounds, but still.
Oh, the Steelers still suck.
Kyle's not exactly the most stable person.
It's crazy.
So if you just try to talk about language without the nonverbal, the language is so flat, right? And if you just try to talk about the nonverbal without the language, you're pulling it all out of the context of the interaction. So 93% of all communication is nonverbal, maybe, but without the verbal piece, the nonverbal is meaningless. Educator, media writer, public relations director, manager of lots of different kinds of things, counselor, if you wanted to go in that direction. You could do like an MSW and, you know, become like a family counselor, therapist. You can take it in any direction you want to. Like, you could take communication into the business world, into law. A lot of people go to law school after here. Or into education, or into social work and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Only has interaction.
So, what does he mean by that? I think what he means, and I think what Carrie gets at in his article, is that, like, we put it on the wall out of context, right? So yes, of course, of all things, communication is the most wonderful because we're the freaking communication department. But I think ultimately what Dewey's saying is that communication gives us reason to feel full of wonder, right? Because it's the building block of social relationships. It's the building block of conceptual realities, right? And that, I think, is what he means, that we ought to wonder about it.